You're just coming now from Times Square after the sad shooting last night of a few people, including a young girl. You have a proposal how to counter crime, but most of it deals with getting illegal guns off the street. For our community, we don't have a problem with gun violence. Most of the crimes, most of the anti-Semitic violence in our streets has to do with people assaulting other people, assaulting Jews in the street, um, those type of things, thefts. How would you? Could you give me some detail about what you would do to counter that on the same level that you have a proposal to counter gun violence?
Well, first of all, your concerns are real. And as Jewish Americans, you should always be concerned because terrorism, anti Semitism, the evolution of coming from probably one of the most horrific experiences known to man is something that you are always reminded of. And I understand that. And representing Brooklyn, which I like to say is the Tel Aviv of America, we have one of the largest Jewish populations. And it's always at the forefront of my mind, not only as your constituents, as my constituents, but as my friends. I'm very much connected to this community. So there's certain things we must do. We must ensure that we never decrease our patrol strength in this city. We must ensure that we use technology to come down to safety, and that's why I put a substantial amount of money into the cameras in the Jewish community. We must also we protect our children. I stood with David Greenfield when he talked about having officers at our yeshivas to protect our children because you know mean people target our babies. But we also must be clear on hate crimes. We have to stop trying to downgrade hate crimes. We need to call it what it is. We must make sure the individuals who are responsible are apprehended and a no plea bargain deal. We can't downgrade hate crimes, not only for the Jewish community, the Chinese community, any other community. In this city, we must say, you attack a person because of their religion, their ethnicity, their lifestyle, we're going to hold you at the highest level. And I'm going to be clear on that. My police department will investigate to catch the people responsible. We will use technology to prevent it from happening and apprehend people in a faster time frame. And we will make sure we have the patrol strength that's needed.
Typically, the first people to be affected by crime has been the Orthodox community. We had in 2019, the early part of 2020, we had a near daily series of assaults on members of the community in Williamsburg and Crown Heights and Borough Park. Some of your past rhetoric has, and your reputation as a member of the NYPD has scared members of the community. In the NYPD, as a cop, you were considered anti-establishment. And the past couple of months, you've been talking about diverting funds from the NYPD to anti-gun movements or something like that, things like that. What could you do to reassure the community that you will be there, and instead of decreasing patrols, you will increase patrols?
Well, first, let's be clear. Let's take two points that you just raised. Number one, my advocacy in the police department. We all know that we abuse stop and frisk. We were stopping 1 million black and brown children every year. That's unacceptable. That's not the city that we want to live in, and that's not the city I want to be a part of. But people say that I'm anti-police, but that is in contradiction of the reality. I have always been endorsed by the PBA. When I ran for state senate, when I ran for borough president, I've always been supported by the PBA. The rank and file members know that I believe in public safety, and justice. They go together. But also, what many people don't realize, I advocated for the anti-Semitism in the police department, the unfair treatment of my Hassidic brothers and sisters. We saw what happened during COVID-19. You couldn't even go to the funerals of your rabbis and your leaders and without being treated unfairly. I spoke out against the governor and the mayor when they attempted to turn COVID into a Jewish issue. So the same advocacy I showed to young black boys in this city to not be treated unfairly, I've shown for the Jewish community. I'm consistent. People should be treated fairly. Now to defund the police part. I've never supported that bumper sticker slogan of defund the police. I don't believe that. What I do believe is that we need to use our resources and our dollars to properly deploy our police. So we have probably $500 million, believe it or not, in police officers doing clerical duties. I say, listen, we didn't hire you to be a telephone switchboard operator or barrier detail. I need you on patrol. I need you going in synagogues. I need you patrolling our streets. So I would shift those men and women from doing clerical duties to patrol. I also said we're spending almost $400 million in overtime. A lot of that is due to officers being in court for 5-6 hours waiting to testify. We could use Zoom. we could use WebEx. Now, what happens when we save that money? When we save that money, I have more money to put in security cameras in the borough parks. I have more money to put in some of the youth programs in your community. Now we become preventive and not just reactionary, and building out our crisis management team. So I will never do anything that would erode public safety. Never. And I am not part of the disband police department, defund police department. No, I am saying to all my agencies, including the police, you must do your job efficiently to get the best out of taxpayers' dollars.
Of all the candidates, you have the closest, wait a second, wait. Of all the candidates, you were closest to the Orthodox community. You were state senator in Crown Heights for many years, Brooklyn Borough president the past 8 years. Why do you think all the endorsements are going to Andrew Yang?
Well, I believe it's a few things. And those leaders, I don't believe they're speaking on behalf of the people. You know, you have those leaders who all of a sudden they see this shiny new toy of Andrew Yang and they saw him 24 points up in the poll and they said, well, you know what, let's all go here right away, you know. But think about this for a moment. One of the biggest mistakes I made in my life was not investing in Microsoft when my buddy came and told me and stated that, listen, this is a good investment. I didn't. He stayed with Microsoft. He's worth millions now. That's what I say to the Jewish community. You invested in this candidate. We have been together for almost 15, 16, 20 years. The reason I went into politics, you think about those early relationships. The worst thing could happen now that people are seeing this shiny new toy is no longer shiny, and Eric Adams' message is getting out, and one poll is showing we are ahead of him. Don't allow someone else to take the investment. I am your Microsoft. You know, this community knows me. The number of sukkahs, the number of Passovers, we stood together over and over again. You know me. I'm not a new friend. I'm an old friend. And you could critique my record because I have a record. We don't know the rest of these guys. Where were they when Starks, the real estate developer, was killed? Where were they when members of Borough Park Patrol was shot and I brought them vests to protect them? Where were they when we bought ambulance for the different Hasolas? Where were they? So I don't know. Anti-Semitism has been in this city. Show me one quote that Andrew Yang has stated about anti-Semitism as you have experienced this in this city, or anything he has stated on behalf of the Jewish people. That's the worst thing you can do right now, is abandon your old friend.
The main issue that people have been citing as the reason why they're endorsing Yang is because of his stance on yeshivas. He has been from the beginning unqualified in his support for yeshivas, while you have tempered your support. You know, you were asked, as far in my counting, you asked 3 times about yeshivas, and while you said that you have to be sensitive to the community and you have to work with the community, you have never said that you will not allow that if the SED, if the State Education Department issues these regulations that would dramatically change the way yeshivas operate, that you will not work with, that you will protect the community for that and make sure that you protect the integrity of yeshivas?
Well, first of all, we talked about this several times, and the first interview, it was a setup. you know, I had no. Listen, I am not interfering with the way of life of Jewish people. And so when I'm hearing someone come to me basically saying, well, if somebody break the law, what are you going to do? How would you respond to that? Without understanding the full scope. And when I went back and spoke and communicated with my brothers in the Jewish community and said, what is he asking here? What's the question? And so to put someone in the room and go after your intention is one thing. So let me be clear right now. There's a big debate that's taking place across this city, not only in the Jewish community, African American, Chinese, South Asian. People are saying they want culturally sensitive education. They want education that the children can look at and see themselves. This is a unified fight that it is not just unique to your community. My commitment to you, I am not going to do anything that's going to dismantle your educational system, and you will have the support you need to continue to produce the qualitative students that you're seeing. I'm seeing the results of your students. I walked through those yeshivas after that first interview and said, let me go see what people are talking about. We should be encouraging people to learn multiple languages, Yiddish and English. We should be teaching them not only to know Shakespeare, but your scholars and the scholars of other communities. And so when it comes down to protecting your way of life and your yeshivas, you have my commitment. I'm not going to do anything to disrupt the success that you have shown. Now, what has really been missing from this? We're only talking about a small number of yeshivas that are not meeting what they're considered to be standard. The overwhelming numbers are doing a good job. And if we're going to use an indicator to shut down schools based on failures, let me give you a real failure. 65% of black children in the Department of Education never reach proficiency. So we need to look at the house of DOE before we start criticizing the house of the yeshivas. So I am going to be there to give the yeshivas the supports they need, and I am not going to do anything that's going to dismantle your successful educational system.
Just to clarify, are you saying that in your 4 or 8 years as mayor, we will not see scenes of police either putting padlocks on yeshivas because of the way that they have secular education, or you won't have police, coming into yeshivas and, maybe telling kids that they consider truant because they're not, because the yeshiva has been closed down because of the secular education? The SED does not have their own law enforcement. Could you assure the community that you will not be their law enforcement agent?
You're not going to see my police department coming into yeshivas acting in a disruptive manner like that, and you're not going to receive those letters stating that at all. There's a disgruntled group of people in your community that have really amplified this, and I have walked through the yeshivas and I see the results. And not only that, I know the men and women who have gone through your yeshivas, and I see how well they're doing in society.
On the subject of Metzitza B'Peh, a component of Bris Milah, the big issue 8 years ago was over Mayor Bloomberg's wanted to regulate that Metzitza B'Peh. Mayor de Blasio put in a compromise that seems to be acceptable for everybody. Are you committed to keeping that?
I'm circumcised. So listen, families should have the right to do what they want with their children within not being abusive. There's nothing abusive about being circumcised. I am not getting in the way of your way of life. I cannot emphasize that enough. Your way of life has become cost effective for our city. You don't overburden my educational system. I don't have a crime problem in your communities. Your economic development is amazing. I am not getting in the way of your way of life, and that includes the circumcisions.
The subject of social justice is a painful one. But for many people, it is now associated with violence and looting. we've seen scenes over the past few months over the past year that I never thought I'll see in my lifetime. The streets of Manhattan burning, the major department stores looted. Can you assure store owners in New York City who want to set down roots over here that looting and burning is never acceptable, even for 1 hour or one night?
Listen, first of all, let me answer that question specifically. Yes, I want to answer that question specifically. Second, I have marched with many of my friends in the Jewish community for several issues whenever they feel they were treated unfairly. So we will both agree that we have a right to protest the right. Uh, but what we don't have a right to do, firebomb police vehicles, break into stores, burn houses, write graffiti on different statues and buildings in the city. That's not acceptable. And we're not going to allow outside agitators to come in and create that form of violence. And we're not going to allow New Yorkers to do that. That's unacceptable. And it won't happen in the city that I am in.
Before we spoke about anti-Semitism, I want to address a different side of the coin. I wouldn't call it anti-Semitism, but perhaps a soft bigotry that Orthodox Jews, visibly Orthodox Jews, feel when they deal with the city bureaucracy, city government, jury duty. Would you commit to making sure that there are visibly Orthodox Jews as members of your administration or in appointments to positions of influence and authority?
Yes, that's the easy one. You know, when you look at my office, I have a very small office staff and a very few number of people I can hire because many of them are civil service protected. So I can only bring in about 20 people. When you look at my office, two of the high officials in my office were Hassidic. And I trust them. They have been great advisors and have assisted me in a number of different areas. So if I have now thousands of employees, you're going to see the community represented in every level of government.
There's been stories about your past with Louis Farrakhan and Al Sharpton percolating around the internet for many years already, but it was recently brought to the fore in a New York Times article. Do you want to address that?
Well, you know, like you said, 93. If we do the math, we have 93, 2003, 2020. We're talking about 17, 18, almost 20 years ago. I think that if anyone ever had a question mark that, wait a minute, is Eric anti-Semitic? Look at my 20-year run. I am not anti-Semitic, and I don't subscribe to the philosophy of the Nation of Islam. We were part of using the local members here as part of security, crime fighting initiative. We were in a different city back then, 2,000 homicides a year, of 98,000 robberies. Many of them were in poor communities. They had a security program that was like the crisis management of today. And we looked at those methods of doing patrol and safety. But I've never subscribed to the belief. As a Christian, I believe in embracing all people. And so 20 years later, if you look at my record, you have to walk away with Eric is not anti-Semitic. Eric is anti-hate, and Eric is a friend of the Jewish people.
The next mayor will be charged with pulling the city out of the economic slump caused by COVID. Do you have a plan for that?
Yes, it's a very clear one. First, this mayor is going to have a $10 billion infusion of cash coming from the federal and state, and an additional amount, or part of that amount, is coming from sports betting. The question really becomes, how do we use those dollars to really stabilize some of the underlying reasons for the inequities that we are seeing? Number one, we have to get crime under control. No one is coming here to spend billions of dollars in tourism when there's a shooting taking place in the center of our tourist district. So we must reinstitute a plainclothes anti-gun unit with the right officers assigned, with the right training, and use other mechanisms to stop the flow of guns in our city. Second, we have to get COVID under control. It's imperative to get our office buildings back open with clear regulations of what is needed to keep employees safe so they can feed into our ecosystem, our financial ecosystem. A third, employment. I am really impressed when I was sitting down with some of my Jewish leaders as they're talking about not only yeshivas, but also how do we do vocational training? We have to get our young people trained in all the skills from carpentry to be electricians to plumbers to get certifications in computer technology. We had 200,000 jobs, 2 to 300,000 jobs that were available pre-COVID that we couldn't fill because the skills were not there. And so it's crucial that we have real training for job employment. And lastly, we have to be clear on investing in our small businesses. The last time the PPP came here, the stimulus dollar came to the city, we ignored our small businesses. We need to help our small businesses. The city has to stop being too bureaucratic, too expensive, too difficult to do business in. We're going to have a more business-friendly environment with all of our agencies, including the Department of Buildings, FDNY, Consumer Affairs. We're going to really roll out the welcome mat to get these businesses back up and operating.
Here's the Israel question. If elected, do you plan on doing what New York City mayors have traditionally done and be an advocate for Israel?
Well, I visited Israel twice. I'm going back again, and I'm going to try to find a plot of land so it can be my retirement place. I love the people of Israel. I love the food, the culture, the dance, everything about Israel. So
Where in Israel do you plan on retiring?
oh, was the Golden Heights, there are a couple of beautiful places that I really loved when I was in Israel. And yes, I'm an advocate for the the country, and I believe in the statehood of Israel. And again, Brooklyn is the Tel Aviv of America. And when I interact with my Jewish brothers and sisters here, just tell me how great life is going to be there. And they're one of the leading tech giants. We're going to create a partnership with Israel in New York to make sure that we can exchange technology and education. They're producing some amazing technological initiative and innovation that I believe we can really benefit from here.
Of all the major candidates in this race, you were the only one to refrain from criticizing Mayor de Blasio. According to a source in City Hall, the mayor has noticed that. Is that a calculated move on your part?
No, I just strongly believe that when you're in a crisis, from my days of being a police officer, when my partner and I ran up the stairs to go after someone who was shooting a gun, we didn't fight and argue while running up those flights. We dealt with the threat. COVID was the enemy of our city. And I felt that it was appropriate not to get into the petty fights between governors and mayors. The public needed to see that as leaders, we had this under control. People were losing their family members. They were checking into hospitals never to see them again. They were on food pantry lines. They were losing their businesses. It was important to me not to criticize, but to be part of the solution.
Would you accept Governor Cuomo's endorsement or campaign with him if nominated?
I am clear. I want the support of every New Yorker, and that includes the governor and any other New Yorker. I believe that I just want to show this city that I'm committed to turning the city around and helping every New Yorker. I love this city. I love the people in this city, and really diversity is our real jewel, our crown jewel. And whomever wants to show their support for me, I welcome that.
There are so many neighborhoods in the city that have the unique characteristic, yet they are governed like the rest of the city. Take Borough Park, for example. Traffic patterns, parking patterns are different in Borough Park to other places. You come Sunday afternoon and it's a madhouse. On Shabbos afternoon, it's deserted. Yet the city been has been enforcing those regulations the same on a deserted Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock as the rest of the city. Would you consider a more focused enforcement?
Without a doubt. You're right. Every community has a unique way of dealing with movement of people, movement of cars, and even just how you exist. I'm in Borough Park during the day, during the morning times when you're dropping off your children. It is almost impossible to move. We should look at how we do trash pickup. How do we coordinate it? I thought David Greenfield was really smart for coordinating the trash pickup, the school buses. You have one school bus that can block traffic for a large amount of time. And so I think it's important to uniquely adjust how do you use city services that it encourages the business and not impedes business.